Beginning of a new working week. We're glad to have you join us for the news at 10 on the network service of NTA. We're reaching you live from Abuja. I'm Elizabeth Stover. We'll begin the news now with the headlines. For promoting the use of science and technology in agricultural food production, Nigerian journalists receive recognition.
To continue to do solution-driven stories, evidence-based reports.
Meeting between federal government and organized labor on electricity and petroleum prices ended deadlock.
The meeting agenda is not well prioritized. We are going front and back, a meeting that's supposed to have been concluded within 2 weeks.
Abia State government appeals to federal government to attend to some unpliable roads in the state. Plus, 400 youths in Nasarawa State engage in sesame seed production. Now, there is increasing focus on the use of science and technology in agricultural production to attain food sufficiency. For journalists who have promoted this cause through their reports, it's time to receive some accolades, courtesy of the Open Forum on Agricultural Biotechnology in Africa in the 2020 edition of the OFAB Media Award. Onengie Fine-Face reports.
Journalists go about gathering and disseminating information on a daily basis to see that society becomes better for it. But in this auditorium are journalists who are not telling stories. They are seated as guests, as dignitaries, to be honored for their hard work and service to humanity.
I've covered biotech for a while, and I believe that for Nigeria to actually achieve its goal of food sufficiency, we really need to embrace and adopt, the application of biotechnology.
A challenge for me to do more, to continue to do solution-driven stories, evidence-based reports.
Open Forum on Agricultural Biotechnology in Africa, the National Biotechnology Development Agency and Africa Agricultural Technology Foundation are jointly celebrating journalists who have distinguished themselves in science, technology and agriculture reporting.
Numbers will continue to support journalists in the quest for knowledge about this technology. We know that science journalism is new and a bit difficult, but we are determined to guide you to ensure that the needed knowledge and exposure that will facilitate our work to be made available to everybody.
Join us at OFAB as we continue to advocate for the deployment of science and technology towards transforming agriculture on the continent and Nigeria in particular.
As expected, award recipients are encouraged to continue to excel in a profession designed to set the balance in society. Onengie Fine-Face, NTA News.
Many thanks to all journalists across Nigeria who have been championing the cause of agricultural development in Nigeria, and warm congratulations to those who have received the awards for their efforts. And in the studio to discuss the role of biotechnology in achieving food security in Nigeria is Rose Gidadu, Country Rep, Open Forum for Agriculture, Biotechnology. Thank you for joining us on the news at 10.
Thank you.
Now, tell us, what kind of intervention does Nigeria need now to become food self-sufficient, and how big is the role journalists have been playing in highlighting all the essential aspects for Nigerians?
Okay, thank you so much for this question. Nigeria actually needs the intervention of agricultural biotechnology because this technology has worked
in many parts of the world. We're using them as models. It has worked so well in the US. It has worked so well in China, in Brazil, in Argentina. You know, the exports, they produce enough to export with the aid of this technology. The technology actually enables you to plant, you know, in a small piece of land, you plant just small portion and you harvest so much. So it helps because it helps the scientists to actually develop these crops to be able to resist, you know, either pest infestation, either be drought tolerant, either be flood tolerant, you know, and so on and so forth. There is so much, you know, to use the technology for. And so it also reduces cost of production. That's the most important thing. And that is what is killing us in Nigeria. You know, our productivities are so low, you know, because of production costs and all those things. The farmers have to spray so many times, spray like over 10 times in some crops, especially cotton. And even we have the beans, you know, in Nigeria that we are the largest producers and consumers, but we don't produce enough because of insect infestation. So like we have a variety of beans that actually has been developed to resist some of these pests that are very notorious, that makes the farmers, you know, to lose everything they produce if care is not taken. So, but the technology has done so well. We have a beans now, and that beans is actually insect resistant, and it has early maturation. The farmers have tested it. This year they've planted on their fields and what. So there's so many. This is just one example. So we have so many that are actually, you know, undergoing trials and so on and so forth. So technology can do so much, can help us to reach there, you know, to reach to that level where Nigeria will be food secured. And that's actually the vision. Our vision is to have Africa where no child goes to bed hungry, a food secured Africa. And with this technology, the technology stands to actually contribute a lot, you know, in the area of food security, in the area of making agriculture a business. And the journalists actually have been playing very, very major role. Their roles have been, you know, invaluable, overwhelming. They've done so well. And this you know, this initiation of this award, you know, is actually to recognize exemplary journalism that will actually, you know, stimulate, you know, the adoption of this technology. That's the agricultural biotechnology, and then stimulate also the adoption of other technologies that can actually help, you know, agriculture, you know, to be a business, not just like producing and eating, but at least let Nigeria produce enough.
Talking about this, what exactly is this technology you're talking about? Do we even have that kind of technology?
We have it. Like when I in my earlier statement, I made mention to you that we already have a crop at hand developed by our scientists at the Institute for Agricultural Research. That's Aya Zaria. They're based in Ahmadu Bello University. They're also under the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. For the past 10 years, research has been going on, you know, had been going on, because the crop is now ready. It has been approved for commercial release, and farmers have tested it. Demonstration plots were actually established on farmers' fields in about 9 states. And I tell you now, the farmers are harvesting and they're so happy.
It is
accessible to yes, seriously, yeah. Because the little they planted, I mean, the harvest is so much. And some of them that are in drought areas, you know, especially in Adamawa State, in Maiha, there was early cessation of rain. You know, initially the rain was so much, but at some point the rain just ceased. And do you know that their local beans, I mean, there was nothing. There was no pod formation. They lost everything. But this variety of beans, I tell you, it was a bountiful harvest. And they're all smiling and they're all looking forward to having access to these seeds. And so this dry season will be used for mass production of these seeds, so that the seeds will get to nooks and crannies of the country. And so we really need the support of the government.
Okay, is it only beans that you have?
It's not only beans, we also have cotton.
Okay.
There are actually 2 crops that are ready. Cotton is there, and cotton is also, I think, the farmers have had access to it. It's ready for commercialization. The farmers bought the seeds, and they planted, and I tell you, it's bountiful harvest. We've been holding farmers, field days, in most of those states that the farmers had access to the seeds, and I tell you, it's overwhelming. The result is overwhelming.
Now, talking about encouraging young Nigerians in the agricultural sector, how much involvement, young Nigerians especially, in food production, has it helped in increasing agricultural output in the country?
Yeah, I think it will, because we're just starting commercialization now, but we are all planning to bring in the young Nigerians because this technology is actually to encourage the young ones, because drudgery, it reduces drudgery and then it gives you more yield. It reduces the frustration that farmers face, and so this is to attract the youth. It will really attract them so that they can be part of the process. All plans are well and are in place. The youth will actually adopt this.
What is the role of government now at various levels? Not only federal government, I'm talking about state, local governments, other stakeholders, scientists and all this.
Yeah, we're actually putting in plans for the state governments, of course. Some of the states where these trials are on, some state governments are also involved in it, and they have seen how the benefits are, the yield in terms of yields and what. And then all other persons, I think it's going to be an all-inclusive plan, because since we're just starting, but all plans are on the way, so that every sector, in the society will be part and, part of this, part and parcel of this, technology, this process. No one will be left behind.
Thank you, Rose Gidado, Country Rep, Open Forum for Agric Biotechnology. We appreciate your time with us on the news.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Now, about 400 youths in Nasarawa State are engaged in sesame seed production under the Nigeria Incentive-Based Risk Sharing for Agricultural Lending, NIRSL, of the federal government. Aliu Tijani Mohammed reports from Lafia.
Doma is the destination of choice for the sesame seed production due to its comparative advantage in the crop. 430 hectares piece of land is currently being cultivated by 400 youths in the area, as the state government targets to empower 4,000 youths through the project across the state. Governor Abdullahi Sule, alongside delegation from the Nigerian Incentive-Based Risk Sharing for Agricultural Lending, NESL, inspects the pilot farm in Doma. Impressed with the program aimed at revolutionizing agriculture in the state, the governor calls on Lower Benue River Basin Development Authority to allocate more land to the youth, as the program will also boost dry season farming. A town hall meeting was also held at the Palace of the Andoma of Doma with all stakeholders on the gains of the project. Challenges that include poor access road to the farm, delayed payments, flooding and climate condition, among other logistical problems, were highlighted with a view to finding solutions for the overall success of the project.
Now I think with the excitement you have seen, you should give us land closer to the dam. That way we'll be able to have the opportunity also for dry season farming.
We started with 400 hectares. Maybe just half of it was being cultivated at the end of the day. But what we're looking forward to is to go to upscaling these operations that we have, not just in Doma, but across the state.
On advice that when the intentions of government, whatever the agencies involved, while the government is working, the government should work with the people.
Some of us were not part of the development of the economy of production. As such, we don't know some farming activity, which are very crucial, were omitted.
With the takeoff of the project in Doma, NESL says it will score up the project ahead of next farming season. From Doma in Nasarawa State, Aliu Tijani Mohammed, NTA News.
If you're just joining us, you're watching the news at 10 on NTA News 24, reaching you live on the network service of the NTA. Still to come on the news, correspondent on the impact of coronavirus on estate development and management. Thank you for staying with us. The scourge of coronavirus pandemic has continued to ravage different sectors of the economy. One of the worst hit is estate development and management, as the quest to meet the housing needs of the people is now a far cry. What is the way forward in mitigating the impact of the coronavirus on housing? Chimobi Walter Naji in this report sorts answers.
For Nigeria to meet the housing needs of the country, an estimated 17 to 18 million housing deficit must be met. Attaining this feat, therefore, has propelled government, both state and federal, to at various times engage in housing development initiatives. These efforts has not been encouraged with the recent global pandemic, which has adversely affected the development of the sector, impacting on procurement of raw materials for these infrastructures.
The pandemic has affected all facets of the economy, including real estate. For us, right from the construction stage, you find out that most of the materials we use in Nigeria for building construction are imported. And what that means is that during the lockdown, most of our members couldn't have access to those materials. So at the end of the day, some of those construction were delayed, and the time for delivery were also delayed.
Issues of devolution of responsibilities among key players in the sector, unfavorable government policies, and instability in the foreign exchange markets are some of the issues affecting development of the sector.
It is usually that sector that regenerates the economy. And when you start multitasking it from the federal, from the state, from the local governments, it affects the economy generally.
Access to land, in any case, and we've been talking about the Land Use Decree or Land Use Act now being an impediment to access. And we've said several times, and not just us, even some other respected institutions have said, let us take this Land Use Act out of the Constitution so that its amendment process can actually be simplified.
What then is the way forward? Stakeholders had this to say.
The Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of Federal Housing Authority, that he has to look into this system, mortgage system, so that at the end of the day, most of the problem we have in housing sector is the low income and medium income. And because they don't have the finances, because real estate is capital intensive, and because it's capital intensive, it's not all that have that financial way to be able to go into it. But if we have a robust mortgage system, I'm sure that most of these persons will have access to it, and that will also help us to reduce the number of housing deficit we have. So,
the duty of providing adequate housing for the citizens, stakeholders believe, is vital in bridging the housing deficit in the country. In Abuja, Chimobi Walter Naji, NTA News.
155 new COVID-19 infections have been recorded in Nigeria within the past 24 hours. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, says the new infections were discovered in 11 states and the FCT, bringing the total number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Nigeria to 66,383. Lagos State recorded 60 of the new cases, followed by Katsina with 37 cases, while Kaduna has 35 cases. 6 new COVID-19 cases were found in the FCT, 4 in Ogun, 3 each in Edo and Kwara states, 2 each in Rivers and Kano states, while Jigawa, Oyo and Taraba states recorded 1 case each. Cumulatively, Lagos leads on the state's case chart with 22,962 COVID-19 cases. Next is the FCT with 6,498 cases, while Plateau trails with 3,800 cases. Currently, there are 3,140 active COVID-19 cases nationwide, with 62,076 recorded patients discharged, while the death toll is now 1,167. And the second wave of COVID-19 can be avoided if Nigerians continue to obey the safety guidelines on prevention. National Coordinator, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Sani Aliyu, gave the advice at a lecture in Lagos. Diana Ajali reports.
The lecture, organized by the Renews Hall of Fame, had the theme, Managing COVID-19 Global Pandemic in Africa, the Nigeria Experience. The National Coordinator for Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Sani Aliyu, and other speakers noted that since the outbreak of coronavirus pandemic, actions have been geared towards curbing the spread and eradicating the virus. Submissions centered on ways to avoid a second wave of COVID-19 in Nigeria.
This is not a time to be complacent. We can see what's going on in Europe and the United States. We need to continue to protect ourselves. Those non-pharmaceutical interventions that we talk about, it's really critical.
We're able to minimally reduce the level of transmission of these diseases, and we're able to see that being well managed has kept us to where we are.
Experts, however, named some of the challenges of COVID-19 in Nigeria, including the adverse effects on the nation's economy.
What we should do is follow every considered opinion offered by the Presidential Task Force and the opinions given by medical experts.
We will leverage on some of this information that has come up, and we will take advantage of the new networks and partnerships that have been created.
We have gotten a lot of information why Africa did not suffer from coronavirus pandemic the way it was predicted.
The resource persons, therefore, urged the public to maintain the culture of hand washing and physical distancing, among other measures. In Lagos, Diana Ajale, NTA News.
In the same vein, the need to continue to adhere strictly to NCDC guidelines aimed at curtailing further spread of COVID-19 has again been highlighted. This formed part of the conversation at a visit by students of the Armed Forces Command and Staff College, Jaji, Kaduna State, the Imo State Task Force on COVID-19 in Owerri. Bright Ebuchwe reports.
Following the threat posed by COVID-19 to the world and by extension national security, students of the Armed Forces Command and Staff College, Jaji, Kaduna State and Imo State to study the measures put in place by the Task Force on COVID-19 in curtailing the spread of the virus. Chairman Imo State Task Force on COVID-19, Professor Morisiwo, represented by the head of Surveillance Subcommittee, Dr. Promise Success, attributed the success story to proactive measures taken by the state government in tackling the first phase of infection.
We need to get ready for this second wave of this pandemic that is about coming up. If we check the world over globally, there is a second wave and there is threats to another lockdown globally coming up.
Team leader, Armed Forces Command and Staff College, Jaji, Kaduna State, Commodore Habila Zakaria, assures that participants will take advantage of the knowledge gained to improve on their approach to security and protection of lives amidst COVID-19.
We are looking at health security in this, we are looking at the pandemic and see how it affects national security.
Some of the places visited during the tour of Imo State include the Federal Medical Center Owerri and Woody Isolation Centers in Owerri. Bright Ebuchu, NTA News.
Still talking health, years after setting aside year 2020 for all countries to achieve 90-90-90 target aimed at suppressing HIV virus and for the world to end the HIV/AIDS in 2030, Nigeria has been counted among the countries lagging behind in spite of government and donor agencies' support. This prompted the retreat for the management staff and board members of the National Agency for the Control of AIDS, NACA, on how to make the agency more efficient. Basi Taikpan reports.
The United Nations 90-90-90 targets see for let's start by 2020. 90% of all people living with HIV will know their status. 90% of everybody diagnosed will be placed on treatments, and 90% of the people receiving treatments will have viral suppression.
All hands are on deck. But why is Nigeria lagging? We have a dual epidemic. One that is declining in the general population, and the other that is raging among the key affected population.
Retreat for NACA management staff is therefore timely.
We're having the opportunity to sit among ourselves, to interact, to be guided by experts.
Security situation in the country and accessibility is seen as some of the reasons Nigeria is yet to achieve the targets.
But the good news is we're making appreciable progress. From last year to now, over 500 new cases have been identified and have been linked to treatment, which in itself give us the confidence.
Although gains in access and treatment continue, many countries and regions are unlikely to achieve the 1990 target. Basi Taikban, NTA News.
This is the news at 10 on NTA News 24. Still ahead on the news, National Leadership of Police Community Relations Committee makes efforts to restore public trust in the operations of the Nigeria Police. We'll be right back.